Hi, I'm J. Scott Campbell.
Hi, I'm Scott Dunbier.
And this is the Danger Girl Artist Edition. I've always had a fascination and interest in action-adventure. I think going back to my love of the Indiana Jones films, James Bond, and I started to make the connection visually that I had a crowd and a following based on how I drew the ladies, as you could say. The idea of femme fatales, the spy girls, the Bond girls, but making it completely focused on them, not so much the male protagonist, seemed really appealing to me. And then I like the idea of there being multiples and not just a singular character, although we do focus in Danger Girl mostly on Abby Chase. An ensemble was more appealing to me, I think, because I had come off Gen 13. A lot of my favorite comic books like X-Men and that were team-based, so I think from there it just kind of started like the best ideas usually do. They just kind of started coming together almost on their own. I just had to get out of the way and let the ideas just kind of flow in. And even the name Danger Girl, I remember that name popped in my head one day, and I was like, oh, that's such a good name. I'm sure it's taken already.
When Jeff was working on Gen 13 and he was starting to work on Danger Girl, he was showing me different things, different designs, and there's an evolution to his work. At Homage Studios at Wildsiderz, we used to call it taking a leap, taking a jump.
Right.
That somebody had made a big move in their style. When you did Danger Girl, to me, you took a big leap. You were always a good storyteller, but your storytelling improved dramatically to me in Danger Girl.
Well, a few things that come to mind when it comes to Danger Girl versus Gen 13. I remember there were a few goals I had in mind. First of all, I was probably cramming a lot more story per issue into Danger Girl. Danger Girl has a tremendous amount of panels per page sometimes. Sometimes the pages will have 12 panels or something crazy like that, because I was trying to cram in so much story into each issue, which I think Gen 13 and oftentimes, especially the regular series, it was maybe a thinner story that had to be drawn out into 22 pages. Now I was drawing 22 pages and trying to probably cram 32 pages of artwork into it, which made it sort of a dense package. When I started out, I felt like I had shied away from drawing machinery, like vehicles, guns, these sorts of things. I drew them, but I always felt they were a weakness of mine. So I kind of went into Danger going, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to buy models of cars and Jeeps and buy props of little guns and things like that, because I wanted it to become a strength for me. So you pretty much saw me really, I think, in those issues, really trying to prove myself to myself, probably in some ways, that I was going to make these things a strength. Another thing too that comes to mind with transitioning from Gen 13 to Danger Girl. At the time, a lot of us in the studio were very impressed with Masumi Shiro and a lot of the anime coming over. And anime have a specific kind of female build that's very sort of lean, very elongated. When I got into Danger Girl, there was a thought, I'm going to bring more of the sort of the pinup sense that kind of, again, the 1960s being an influence to James Bond. I really wanted the body types to be not so youthful as they were in Gen 13, but to give them more of that sense of maturity to those characters, and that was a big difference as well, going from Gen 13. So I do see a huge, even now when I look back at it, I see a huge leap going into Danger Girl, just because I was turning the knob on so many different ways of approaching how I was going to draw.
One thing that people are going to see in these books is the prep work you have. I mean, look, I'm sorry, you're crazy. You go overboard when doing so many different things, and it's great. Yeah. I say that in the best possible way. As
you get on in years as an artist, you either start to go down the path of being more and more obsessive compulsive about that stuff, or you start to back off and realize that's not the most productive way to be. And in my case, I think I saw a rabbit hole that I needed to steer away from.
Well, that was your peak.
Yeah. That was peak obsession when it came to prepping work.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also, on Danger Girl specifically, point out what a great job Alex Garner did.
Phenomenal.
As an inker.
I'm sure it's been many years, so I'm trying to think. I don't think he complained much. He might have complained a little bit about how busy those pages were, but no, his work I think was peak Garner at that period of time as well. The last part of Danger Girl was a little bit more of a mixed bag of different amazing inkers. They were really all my favorite inkers at the time, so I couldn't have asked for better as far as getting that book over the finish line. If anything, over the years, I think as many amazing inkers as I've worked with, sometimes what I like about my own inks that I do now is I like sort of injecting a little bit of flaw into the inking. I feel like if it's too polished, sometimes that's not always the best thing. I like there to be a little bit of grit and a little bit of imperfection to it. That's what gives it a human vibe, you know.
Imperfection is the perfect word because it needs to feel organic and real. I've been very lucky to have done a lot of different books, worked with a ton of different creators. I've actually edited more Alan Moore books than anybody, including Karen Berger.
Wow.
Which is sort of insane, you know.
That is funny.
Danger Girl is right up there with the rest of them. It was an amazing, fun experience. It was crazy. It almost killed me. Literally.
hopefully changed your work methods since then. I know, but that was true though. We would do crazy hours back then. And I used to pull all-nighters all the time. I don't do that anymore now. I think it's too hard on, my heart on just sort of like, it's not good to miss out on that kind of rest. But looking back on it, it's more like you see how the world has changed when you look at those pages. When I look at Danger Girl, I don't think anything embarrasses it or makes it seem completely out of place either. In that way, I think we create a story that if we put it out now would probably still totally work and probably would still have success, I would guess. The one thing that's very intriguing about returning to Danger Girl is I am very fascinated by gauging the fans' passion for you doing something based on how much they want to get behind a project. To do the pages that you've seen here with that level of detail, you're talking 16, 18-hour days, like weekends. It was brutal getting those books, and even then they were late often because we still couldn't, even at that schedule, we couldn't quite pull them together in time. So the idea of crowdfunding makes something like that a little bit more tangible, and also too, I think there are other avenues now that make returning to something like this a little bit more appealing than maybe it was even 10 years ago. It becomes a little less risky for a creator to do something like that, I think, in this environment, which is nice. It's nice that the fans support this sort of material.
An artist edition is a book that mimics the experience of having original artwork. The origins of artist editions come from my early days as an art dealer. They're scanned from the original art in color. You see all the little nuances that make original art unique. All of the whiteout, all of the blue pencils, the margin notes. It's the closest way to get to see classic original art, sometimes worth millions of dollars, in one book.
Here are some of the pages that we've been scanning in for the artist edition. Fans of Danger Girl will recognize this. This is the cover to issue number 1. Now, this gives you another idea of like the kind of details you're going to see in an artist edition. You can even see the blue pencil here, where I was kind of giving myself an idea where the logo was going to be. Of course, that's done digitally when they put trade dress and logo in. Both myself and Garner's signature at the top, because just to keep track of it on a sort of a technical level when these pages are scanned in.
I mean, it really doesn't get much more iconic than this. Do you have the crocodile page or the alligator page in there?
Oh, where she's running across the alligators?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's this one right here.
I love that because to me, this really does have like sort of a Disney animation feel to it.
With the idea of an animated sequence like that. It's also in the book that's kind of fun too. I don't know if these will show up on camera, but these are the way I would do my breakdown. So this would be the layout for the number 1 cover I showed. This is 4 pages per page, twice down. I would put them on a Xerox machine. I had my own Xerox machine at the time. And I would blow them up 20 or 200%. So I'd have my roughs to Lightbox and get the final pages figured out. So these will be in the book as well, right?
Absolutely.
I don't have every page I ever did like this, but this gives you at least a flavor of how these books were put together that way. When I first started seeing the artist editions that Scott Dunbier was putting out, I was blown away by the presentation and how well his idea came to fruition in this final product. Now it's been many years. I have quite a few of these on my shelf. The idea that I can finally have one with my material in it is pretty great. For the longest time, Danger Girl just seemed out of reach. The originals had been sold off years ago, scattered to the wind. I had my absolute favorite pages that I had held back for myself. So the idea of having enough of the Danger Girl pages together to participate and have a book like this, it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen. When Scott brought it up to me, it's funny because I had just had a conversation with a friend and a collector, a gentleman by the name of Greg, who was a super collector of my pages at the time. And I happened to say, hey, Greg, do you still have any of those Danger Girl pages? And he said, yeah, I have quite a few of them, probably all of them. That got us off to the races. Between his collection and what I had, we put out a call to different markets, the collectors' websites and things like that, to see who else was out there who had pages. And at this point, we feel pretty good that we've got a collection very much worth the efforts involved. And to have actually a book in this collection of books that Scott's done over the years that to me are like the epitome of like quality and craftsmanship in a book is definitely something I'm very, very proud of and honored to be a part of. Hi, I'm J. Scott Campbell. Be sure to back the Danger Girl Artist Edition on Kickstarter.